So welcome to our creatively named midweek video, where I take some time and kind of provide some alternate takes or some kind of things in the margin that I've been looking at that might help with the current sermon series at Faith Alliance Church. And so we are starting a new sermon series called Hope After Hope Before Hope on the book of Revelation. And if you've never read the book of Revelation, this might be a good intro video. If you have read the book of Revelation, this might be a good reintroduction as a video. Either way, the Revelation is a wild ride, and it takes a little bit of work to understand it. Now, you can read through the entire book of Revelation, and I encourage you to do so, but it takes a partner, it takes some help to be able to understand what's happening in the book of Revelation. And there are a number of great books to read that I'm going to talk about. There's a number of great commentaries, there's a number of great videos. Hopefully, this is at least one that is passable, that'll help us to understand Revelation a little bit more, because it is one of those books that gets a lot of discussion, but not a lot of dissecting. And so we're going to spend a few months really kind of understanding what's going on in the book of Revelation, so that we can understand hope as a reality. See, the book of Revelation should actually lead us to worship, not worry. And that's one of the things I wanted to bring out from the offset, that Revelation itself, as a book, as a literary device, as God's holy word to us, is intended to lead us to worship, because we are to, as we walk through Revelation, notice and follow the Lamb. And the Lamb will lead us to certain victory in Him and only Him, and recreation in a new heavens and a new earth. And so, as we understand Revelation, what we'll see is there's going to be a lot of strange images that are going to feel really close and unfamiliar, maybe a little bit nightmarish. There's dragons, there's monsters, there's lakes of fire, robes dipped in blood, swords coming out of mouths, and there's fiery eyes and bronze feet, all sorts of incredibly wild and creative imagery that helps us to understand what God is intending and what the world is encompassing in doing so. So Revelation leads us to worship, not to worry, even when things feel incredibly close or really loud. It leads us to understand our source of all hope, that Christ is the end and source of our hope, that even when there's all these other things kind of crouching around in us and through us and circling and kind of cycloning around, that we follow the Lamb, and the Lamb always leads us to worship Him and not to worry. We understand hope by following the Lamb throughout the book. And even when things explode and that there's monsters and dragons and evil, when there's anything that you can think of to distract us, and Revelation uses almost anything you can think of to distract us, we will be called to find the Lamb and to look to Him as the one who carries and has final victory. We look for the Lamb at the end as victorious, and in doing so find enough hope for us today. When the Lamb is victorious, there is always enough hope for today. Okay, so we have to define some terms to understand Revelation well. We have to understand that Revelation is a number of different genres in the Bible. It kind of holds a number of different genres in the Bible as far as how it kind of is meant to be understood by an audience. One, it's a letter, it's an epistle. It is an epistle, a letter to the 7 churches that are named in the first 3 chapters. It's a prophetic text. It speaks God's reality into a current cultural situation. It spoke to its time in first century ancient Near East in about 2,000 years ago. It spoke to the Roman occupation of the Israelites and the Roman oppression that they were facing. But it also speaks to, because it's prophetic, not only current but future realities. Revelation is also an apocalyptic text, meaning that it uses large imagery, loud imagery, for us to understand what the end of all things is like. Apocalyptic is this idea, you might have even known about the term apocalyptic in some movies, some dystopian kind of movies that Hollywood loves to write and release. But apocalyptic is about the finality. It's a final and cosmic battle, a clashing that leaves one victorious within. And in the Christian faith in the Bible, we see that there is one victorious within, and his name is Jesus. But we have to go through a lot to get there, but we can follow the Lamb as we do. So to understand Revelation, we have to understand apocalyptic literature and imagery. And we see that apocalyptic imagery uses large, loud images, metaphors, stories, pictures for us to understand what's happening in the text. I'm going to quote from one of my favorites, Flannery O'Connor. You'll hear about her a lot if you watch or are participating in this series, because I think she's a good partner to understand apocalyptic literature. She was a novelist, an author back in the mid-20th century, and was a Christian, and talked and wrote a lot about the Christian experience, though from a very apocalyptic perspective, meaning she used a large, loud, grotesque sometimes imagery for people to read and understand the Christian faith. And so she says this about her writing: when you can assume that your audience holds the same beliefs you do, you can relax and use more normal means of talking to it. When you have to assume that it does not, then you have to make your vision apparent by shock. To the hard of hearing you shout, and for the almost blind you draw large and startling figures. Revelation is a book filled with large and startling figures. It's a book that shouts. It's a book that pushes its imagery right into your face, that tries to fill your ears with all sorts of noise, to show you what the world is like. That's what this apocalyptic book, Revelation, does. God kind of removes the curtain and shows us what the spiritual life is like, what's happening behind the scenes. And so we get to see what's going on. And he uses this incredible imagery that's going to be very unfamiliar and very uncomfortable on purpose, in order for us to shake out of our false hope, and so that we can understand where true hope lies and where true faith lies. Revelation will always shake out any false hope. It'll shake out any false faith. And it'll appropriately stack faith and hope only on the person of Jesus. So the language of apocalypse is one of high imagery and emotive language. There's a poetic quality to it. It doesn't mean that's removed from the real world. In fact, apocalyptic imagery is always connected. It's tied into the real world, even though it has this high imagery, high poetic narrative to it. And so we'll see that in the book of Revelation, there's a lot of things that are tied into things that the author, John, the guy who wrote the book of Revelation, is understanding as he talks about Babylon and Jerusalem and all these different images. We understand them to be very specific things in the world that he's experiencing. So apocalyptic imagery isn't removed from reality. It ties itself into reality using large and startling figures. As an apocalypse in the book, Reading Revelation Responsibly says, as an apocalypse, Revelation is intended to reveal, not conceal. The goal is not speculative foresight, but rather theological insight. So the idea behind Revelation is not to conceal and make things hidden. It's actually to show you what's actually happening. Is to tie things into what's actually going on in the world, the way that John was experiencing it, in a way that's prophetically aligned, so that we understand not only how things were, but then also how things will end up. What will finality look like? What does apocalypse look like? The final battle, the cosmic clash. And we see that in Revelation. There's a final battle, there's a cosmic clash, and one comes out victorious, and we follow him throughout. Revelation stacks hope in the one place it actually works out. We find it in Christ. This is the language of symbol and image. Deeply poetic, highly imagery, loud, close, but still connected to the real world. So through this series, we're going to become, because of its imagery, because of what it's saying, more uncomfortable. We're going to see things up close. We're going to hear things that are louder than life, and we're going to have to respond to them. That unfamiliarity will create a discomfort in us. That'll cause us to reassemble our thoughts on Christ as we follow the Lamb. It'll cause us to reassemble our hope and our faith on the one who is actually victorious. So that as we reassemble our thoughts, our hope, our faith on Christ himself, that spills out into our real, actual, day-to-day normal lives. That as we hope in the God who is victorious, we have enough hope left over for today. We hold on to the promises of God as if they were already completed in him today, even though we wait for his final victory. We hold tension between the resurrection of Christ and the final and second coming of Jesus. Our thoughts become reassembled on him. Our faith is reassembled on him. Our trust is reassembled on him as we find hope in the Lamb in the book of Revelation that spills out into our lives to find hope in him as God is active and moving in our world. No matter how close things get, no matter how loud things get, we can find hope in Christ, the one who's victorious, as we follow the Lamb in the book of Revelation.